Have I told you the story of how I saved the human race?
Yes, Grandpa.
It was the year 2035. Caleb, Marcus, and I were strapped in and feeling the sleeping medication running through our veins. I watched the doctor.
Grandpa,
Yes, Kayla.
can you tell from the beginning?
I thought it was the beginning.
No, the very beginning. How did you become an astronaut?
Well, I guess it would have all started in the year 2030. After I graduated Stanford University with both my engineering and mathematics degree. Then I graduated pilot school. I worked a desk job for quite a while, letting all my schooling go to waste. Then I saw it one day. NASA is looking for the first group of commanders to Mars, it read. They must be daring, fearless, and brave to endure this 9-month trek to a planet that is 33.9 million miles away. Will you be the one to make the first mark on an untouched world in the year 2035? I sprinted home that day and immediately broke out my old schooling books. I studied everything I had already learned in preparation for that interview. From Earth, Mars is 33.9 million miles,
making the trip to Mars about 7 months. The bright rust color that Mars is known for is due to the iron-rich minerals in its regolith, otherwise known as the layer spun from the orbited rock region, may instead indicate brightness. The soil of Earth, this means that all that is desert regolith, just half I'll bet one loaded with organic content. From Earth, Mars is 33.9 million miles.
When the day came around, I wore my best suit and I was absolutely terrified. I walked into my interview and about 5 minutes into it, the captain stopped me. I thought that I had completely messed up somewhere. But instead of pointing to the door, he held out his hand. And just like that, I was in. I spent 2 years training and becoming part of my new family. Then the day of launch came, and we were taken to the spaceship. Standing at the entrance of the shuttle, Marcus, Caleb, and I hugged and shook hands. Caleb, our commander and my best friend, was the first one into the shuttle. We filed in after him, each of us going to our hibernation capsules. The room was about half the size of this one, but held everything for 4 men to survive for 9 months. The doctor and mechanics came in and checked that the capsule and tubes were in working condition before liftoff. The doctor administered the anesthetic, and we drifted off into the countdown and liftoff. I remember hearing the numbers drag on. They seemed to get slower and slower. The next thing I heard were sirens. The loudest and most shrilling you can think of, right here in my ear. Alarms were flashing red all around the ship. My capsule had cracked open, and I was met with a digital greeting. He told me that something had gone wrong and my medication had worn off. He went on to explain that I would need to ration all emergency supplies for the next 3 months and use everything sparingly. I lifted the lid of the capsule and stepped into the floor, falling to my knees, then floating up. I grabbed for the wall to steady myself. I looked around the room and came to the realization that I was the only one up. Once I got the hang of the whole zero-gravity thing, I floated over to the window to look into the pitch-black space beyond me.
So, what did you do?
Well, I'm about to tell you. I went to the kitchen to look for the emergency rations. According to the launch team, there were 2 emergency ration boxes, each box holding 200 MREs. That was enough to feed all 4 of us 3 meals a day for 1 month. I had 3 months left of the mission, so I would have to take 3 of the other meals. 2 months passed by, dragging on for what seemed like eternity. You never understand that what true loneliness feels like until you are floating around in space surrounded by a bunch of sleeping dudes and some MREs. Somewhere around day 60, I heard those alarms go off again. I rushed to the control room to try to figure out what triggered them. Caleb's hand grabbed my shoulder. I've never felt more relief or comfort wash over my body.
So I've been about 180 MREs. That leaves 220 divided into the 30 days we have left. divide into the two of us, at least each of us 3 meals a day. That's saying if Marcus doesn't wake up.
It's gonna be a long month.
You haven't the slightest idea.
Caleb and I spent the next half a month getting closer, becoming best friends. When day 70 came around, Mars was in view. It was something unlike anything else I have ever seen. I had spent 3 months staring into darkness, and Caleb had spent 1 month. So when we finally saw that red planet come into view, Caleb and I jumped. Well, floated really, for joy. We strapped ourselves in and prepped for landing, which was the most difficult thing Caleb and I had ever been through. First, we started going at insane speeds. Then it got insanely hot. Then I think I blacked out, and I think Caleb did too. The next voice I remember waking up to was not Caleb, nor control centers, but Marcus.
Nate, come on, man. Get up.
Where's Caleb?
He's injured.
Injured. He was right next to me.
Yes, and you had your suit off. Don't you remember any of this? What's the last thing you remember?
Caleb and I were strapped in, and he felt the change. He felt the change in speed and the temperature. Then I blacked out. What's wrong?
Caleb must have realized that neither of you could take the heat or the force going down. So seeing as you blacked out, he put on your suit. Right whenever he was going to put on his, he blacked out.
Will he be okay?
He's going to need time. He will be okay, but he's never going to walk again.
He saved me. He could have got himself killed.
He very well could have. However, we can't let him saving you go to waste. Let's get up and save
Marcus
our
then
lives.
took me to see Caleb, but he was still unconscious. Marcus was sent to look for ways to find water and support life outside of the ship. I was sent to do experiments on the soil and air in order to make sure that nothing was too poisonous. And our botanist, he was lying half dead on the table inside. Caleb woke up a week later, dazed and confused. We told him what happened, and we figured out that Marcus had predicted correctly. Caleb would never walk again. I built Caleb a little wheelchair so when he was up to moving around, he had a way to get around the ship. 3 months later, I would bring Caleb anything he needed from outside the ship, and he would run his test inside. At the 6-month period, we had figured out how to grow plants outside, and Marcus had found water. Within a year, the first group of people were beginning their own trek to Mars to join us on our better place. Upon their arrival, we began to build and pressurize homes. A year after that, we had a small community flourishing. It's getting late. We should rest.
Grandpa, I want to be remembered like you one day. I want to make a mark. Can I do that?
You can do anything if you really try, Kayla. You might be the one to conquer the next new world.